Welcome back to another conversation, F3 leader, falling forward fast. This week, as you can tell, we are talking onward. This is our topic today. But I got some great feedback from you all after our last conversation about embracing disruption. Some of it were some really good questions. Mike, how a leader trying to move forward, and yet we're talking about failure. Your first focus was about failure. And trying to embrace or prepare for failure instead of looking ahead or trying to set a goal or anything else. Why did you start talking about failure? Well, the reason I started talking about failure is because of confidence and because of foundation. And if you're going to be a leader and you're going to fall forward fast, remember, that's what you've been designed to do. That's what you are called to do today. With everything that is going on in the world around you, every question that you're hearing, every concern that everybody has that they're looking for you to respond to, be reminded in that moment that you were fearfully and wonderfully made for a time such as this. And in that foundation of recognizing who your Father is, and that your Father has a design and a plan for you, and He's not going to leave you, He is with you every step of the way, you should have a confidence and courage to take that step forward. And so failure, remember, failure was not something that we're afraid of. We look at it as part of the process and that we're actually moving forward and getting stronger. And we're bettering ourselves today than we were yesterday. And we're getting closer to that goal. So that's why we started with that kind of conversation, and that leads us right into this discussion of onward. I love the word onward. If you've gotten an email from me, you will notice at the end that I don't really do the respectfully or sincerely, Michael. I always like to end it with onward. Onward and an exclamation point. There's not a comma. There's an exclamation point because that's how you say onward. It's emotion. You're not sitting when you say the word onward. It is an action that you're taking going forward. And as a leader, onward for you usually means up a hill. Doesn't mean we're kind of going down to a valley and we're going to rest and settle. Onward usually means we are climbing toward that mountaintop. And you've got people behind you. So onward is something that you're shouting as you're racing into battle. My friend Wes Lane talks about the rebellion that we've been called to. He reminds everyone that it is no accident that there's chaos right now, and to embrace that and recognize their role and their call in that. Well, onward is that charge sound. It's the trumpet call as we take the battlefield, right? So what does falling forward fast have to do with onward? Well, first of all, when you fall forward fast, the motion that you're taking is you are in an action where your heart is leading faster than your legs might go. So you may trip and fall, but it's okay because it's your passion and your heart that is leading the way going forward. But today I want to leave you with a concept. I want you to write this down. It's an old cowboy ethics quote that will serve you well. You better know where you're going, or else you might end up somewhere else. Think about that for a minute. You better know where you're going, or you may end up somewhere else, right? What is the foundation where you're starting from? And where are you trying to head to? And so when we say onward, where are we going? Where are you leading people? You better have that built into your mind and focus on that. Don't waver from that. Don't be afraid when things come your way or when you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you might have failed. Don't lose your target. A lot of times this is where you'll hear if you're being discipled or if you have a spiritual mentor, or a lot of times in devotion you'll hear the phrase, eyes up, right? You'll hear this thought, eyes up. This is where that concept is telling you to keep your eye on your goal and then look up above it and remember your foundation and remember that you are sent. Remember that you were created fearfully and wonderfully made, that I keep saying that over and over because I don't want you to forget that. In the good times or the bad times, I don't want you to forget that you are not an accident. You are not some fleeting coincidence that just happened to be in this year and this time. You are more important to that. You're more precious than that. And this motion, this conversation about onward and that future that God has birthed and breathed into the world and that he is called forth and he is designed for my children and your children and their future cannot happen without you understanding how important you are. And that you need to fall forward fast if we're going to get there, and we're going to get there together. We're going to talk about 3 key things today. And I'm going to shock you a little bit with some of the conversation here. Someone's going to go back and look at this, I know, in a couple of years, and they're going to remind me about the day that I spoke positively of an OU basketball coach. You know I bleed orange. It's okay. A lot of my family went to OU. I'm great with it, but man, it's tough when you root for the other guy, the other coach, or the other team, right? But listen, Kelvin Sampson had this quote. Good friend of mine, Renzi Stone. I was working with him when he started Sampson. Now it's Sampson PR. Back then, Sampson Strategic Communications. We had a small team, and for a staff retreat one day, he brings in Coach Kelvin Sampson. And Coach Sampson comes in, and he's kind of giving us that motivational speech, and he's leading us to, like, dream big about what we can do. And somewhere in the middle of there, he had a conversation about what kind of a player you're going to be on the team. And it's just like when you approach breakfast, who do you think is selling out more for breakfast? Is it the chicken or is it the pig? And I remember vaguely that discussion, but then he said this. The one thing that he tells his coaching staff and that he tells his players all the time, don't talk to me about problems, talk to me about solutions. Folks, it's very easy today to point out what's wrong with the world. It's very easy to jump in and get involved in the complaining, right? The cancel culture feels heavy right now. This is not a new thing. And it's going to come up again next year and the year after and everything else. It is very easy to get caught up in complaining about problems. And actually, emotionally, sometimes it gets satisfying. If it bleeds, it leads, right? I used to work in broadcasting. I started my career producing at Channel 9. I did radio, and there was that saying all the time, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, here's one thing you need to understand, because typically this conversation leads to the media, right? And now half of you are starting to think about fake news, and the other half of you are starting to think about media bias and everything else. Here's what you need to understand. In the United States of America, it's a free press. So the press is funded by selling advertising and getting eyeballs. Social media, very much the same. It's just the new evolution of the business model for cable news. They need eyeballs. They need clicks. If you're not clicking, they're not going to talk about it. Do you hear me? It's not the media. It's us. When I would be at Channel 9, we would have a bunch of stories that would come up. The producers and the directors would meet together, and they'd have a bunch of different stories, and some of them would be wonderful, positive stories about like big brothers, big sisters, or a ministry in town that was helping out. And then there would be a story of like a house fire that caught in the middle of a neighborhood, and then there'd be a story about a shooting that happened on the southwest side of town. Guess which one they'd run? And guess why? Because that's what we were watching. So you got to understand that if you talk about problems, you're going to be part of culture. You're going to be emotionally. It may feel great to get something off your chest. It might feel good because you're getting a bunch of clicks on your Facebook page, or your tweet is being retweeted all over the place. And yeah, we're in the middle of it. That's not what you were called to do. That's not the light that is shining on and through you. Don't talk about problems. Talk about solutions. More importantly, be the solution. Right? There's a quote that a lot of people like to use from I think Gandhi. It's attributed to Gandhi when he said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." Right? But I mean, this is all going back to the Sermon on the Mount. Right? When you are faced with a problem, what are you going to do? Are you going to join the crowd? Or are you going to show love and kindness and lead in the direction that we need to go? Are you going to be the solution? Are you going to talk about the solution when everybody else is fighting? Are you going to stand up and do what's right when it may not be popular? Which one is more valuable to you? Which one is more important to you? I'm here to tell you today and to remind you that you were designed and that you have been created and gifted by God, that he believes in you and he's standing with you, and you don't have to just be in the back of the room and go along with the crowd. When you can feel it in here, that's the Spirit moving in you. Unleash it. Onward, right?